first recorded in England during the 13th century. This unusually extreme event for the time mode of execution was made the statutory punishment for treason in 1351. The process of being hanged, drawn and quartered began with the victim being dragged to the site of execution while strapped to a wooden panel, which was in turn tied to a horse. They would then experience a slow hanging in which, rather than being dropped to the traditional quick death of a broken neck, they were instead left to choke horribly, their body weight dragging them downwards. Once half strangled, the drawing would begin. The victim would be strapped down and then slowly disemboweled, their stomach sliced open, and their intestines and other major organs hacked apart and pulled from the body. The genitals would often be mutilated and ripped from between their legs. Those unlucky enough to still be alive at this point might have witnessed their own organs burnt in front of them before they were finally decapitated. Once death had finally claimed them, the recipient's body would be carved into 4 pieces, or quartered, and the parts sent to prominent areas of the country as a warning to others. Flaying, better known as skinning alive, has a long and grotesque history. Various techniques have been utilised in many different cultures in which flaying has been employed, but the basis remains the same. Slowly, excruciatingly, slice the skin from the body while keeping the victim alive. Carving from the Assyrian period shows the process beginning with incisions to the thighs or buttocks, while the European method shows it starting with the skin being torn from the feet and lower legs. Chinese emperors ordered the skin to be peeled from their victims' faces. Death would normally come as a result of massive blood loss and shock, but in the unfortunate cases where expert flayers were used, the victims could be kept alive in a state of perpetual agony for several days before finally succumbing to their hopelessly infected wounds. Walking the plank might not have been the most pleasant of deaths, but it seems moderately more humane than the other favoured maritime punishment of keelhauling, employed mostly by the Dutch and the French from the 1500s until it was abolished in 1853, a punishment that often ended in death due to the severe wounds sustained. It saw the victim's legs weighted and suspended from a rope, dropped from the bow of the ship and then repeatedly pulled underwater along the length of the hull and over the keel to the stern. In the age of wooden sailing ships, the hull of the vessel would normally be coated in a thick layer of barnacles, whose shells could be rock hard and razor sharp. As the drowning sailor was yanked relentlessly through the salty water, these protrusions could strip the skin from his body, gouging out raw chunks of flesh and even, by some accounts, tearing off whole limbs or severing their heads. Most famously used by Vlad the Impaler, the 15th century ruler of Wallachia in present-day Romania, and inspiration for Count Dracula, the act of impalement had a long, grim history. While images tend to depict people skewered through the midsection and then held aloft in a manner that would almost certainly be about a rapid death. Traditionally, the stake would be partially sharpened and planted point up in the ground. The victim would then be placed over the spike as it was inserted partway into the rectum or the vagina. As their own body weight dragged them further onto the pole, the semi-greased wooden stake would force its way up through their body, piercing organs with an agonising slowness, and as it eventually penetrated the entire torso, finally tearing an exit wound through the skin of the shoulder. A slow and agonising punishment, this method traditionally saw the victim gradually lowered, feet first, into boiling water or wax, although uses of boiling wine and molten lead have also been recorded. If the shock of the pain did not render them immediately unconscious, the person would experience the excruciating sensation of their outer layer of skin utterly destroyed. Immersion burns with skin dissolving right off their bodies, followed by the complete breakdown of the fatty tissues boiling away beneath. It seems safe to assume that such a horrendous fate, one of the worst execution methods ever devised, would be reserved for the foulest of murderers. Historical documents refute this. Emperor Nero is said to have dispatched thousands of Christians in this manner while in the Middle Ages. The main recipients of the punishment were not killers or rapists, but coin forgers, particularly in Germany, the Holy Roman Empire. In Britain, meanwhile, King Henry VIII introduced the practice of execution for those who use poison to commit murder. Thank you for watching. Please hit that subscribe button and leave a like and a comment.